talk. Last time, of course, we went into deep depth in art with Please Touch the Artwork. And this time we're going in depth into grief. Yes, Matt made a master audio piece with the Forest Quartet. And you will find out why this is such a masterpiece on that regard. But I also think Matt is a very nice and cheeky character. So I just immediately ask him a cheeky question. So enjoy! Well, Matt, I really love your vibe, and that is why I invited you for this interview. And I want to ask you the first question of one of my followers, and he was wondering if you would be an instrument, what instrument would you be?
Yes, well, that's a great question. I would definitely be a synthesizer, which is a little bit of a weird instrument, but it's kind of like my favorite instrument. I have a lot of them sitting here. This guy.
It would be that guy, yes.
A modular synthesizer, and I think synthesizers are cool because you can just build them and mess with them and interact with them, and it's not always like music that comes out. Sometimes it's just weird sounds, but it's still considered an instrument because it's making music, and it's the base of a lot of music that we hear today. So but yeah, if I should choose an acoustic instrument, I would choose piano maybe, but that would be my answer.
I guess with this answer that you play a lot of different instruments. Is that right?
Yes, I do. I think I don't have an instrument that I play very well. I think maybe the synthesizer I'm very familiar with, but come from a producer background, and as a producer you are very it's more like as a sound designer, you also it's about creating the sounds. It's not as being good at just making one thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I do play a lot of instruments because I love experimenting with them and touching them and getting weird sound out of it.
Nice. Okay, mm-hmm. I know that on Steam that your game is literally a family project also in the credits, right? How is it? Like, is it easy or is it extra challenging to make a project with your family?
Well, I think it depends on the family and very much. In the family relations. In my case, it was very easy because I guess they always knew that it was my idea and I had the ownership. And so it might have been harder if, let's say, we started it together as a project and then we would have to have discussions and debates about what to do. And so it wasn't so much like that. It was more like, oh, I need a singer, I need a bass, I need a jazz composer. And I happened to ask my family because it felt right, but also it felt very available. They were accessible to me. And so in that way, it was very practical in the beginning. And then it ended up becoming very emotional because it was like suddenly, it's like actually about my mom, which I didn't really understand. The game is, sort of based on the idea of me losing my mom, and so it's a thing that is very big to me and my sister and my father, of course. So it's made it very beautiful for us to have this experience to make this game together. But it was never that intention in the beginning. So in the beginning, it was more like casual in a way.
Okay, so the singer in the game, Emma, is your mother, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but the sound of the singer is my sister, yes. Nina, the voice of the singer.
Yeah, that one must be very challenging to make such a game, to just having like all your emotions into one game.
Yeah, it makes it harder when you feel that maybe you're failing at it. It's a much harder feeling because you're failing also on a personal level. So I think if you have projects that are less personal, it's easier to detach from them and be like, okay, well, I mean, it still sucks if you feel that it's not going your way. It was definitely harder on a different level.
So if I'm then correct, because I was also like your game company is called Matt and his friends. Well, that makes sense. But then the logo is female. So is that represent your mom or?
I think if you look at my Matt and Friends logo, is just Matt and Friends, but I liked the logo for the Forest Quartet is the spirit. So I think Matt and Friends is just using that logo right now, but it's nothing about that really. I think it's like my company is not tied to being about, let's say, projects with my family or anything like that. It doesn't have to be personal every time. Mm-hmm. I'm working on a new project and it's not a personal project. So.
And are there still your family members working with the new project, or is it like, okay, that is separate from what I'm doing now?
I might get my sister to help me, but more as a sound designer and less as a singer. But it's a little harder for me to imagine exactly how they would be involved. But yeah, I mean, I always like to include my family in any sonic project that I'm doing. I always like, to hear their opinions and on it.
And I hear that you have a lot of experience with music, all of you guys, kind of.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the thing. My father played as a professional bassist since he was, I don't know, 18 or 19, and he's surrounded himself with great musicians all his life. And when we grew up, he was always telling us not to get a job as a musician, and so we ended up, me and my sister, going in other directions, but we still had music. It was still like I still said I want to make a game so I can make the sound, and
Yes.
like she's making music and she's a great sort of singer and performer, but she's like a sound designer, so she's working more with sound. I think it's just hard. I mean, if you bring your kids up in an environment, it's hard for them to, like, when they grow up, to not want to get back to that environment that they grew up in. So if you don't want your kids to become musicians, then don't take them to concerts, and don't play music in the house all the time. Like, just don't have instruments hanging on the walls, because they're gonna want to do that.
I don't think it's bad though. So
I mean, it's not bad. It's not the best career, but it's not bad. No, it's wonderful.
the theme of the game is a lot about grief, right? So what are your inspirations while making this game?
Initially, it was not so much about grief. It was more about this spiritual, this forest universe that I wanted to create, and this like idea of a band. So I mean, my inspirations have been more like of how a band works and like the life of a band. I've just been very attracted to forests and having this, like, let's say, I don't do it that much, but I like to go alone in the nature and for a long time, and I think those were some of my key points of inspiration. And then I had played games like Kentucky Route Zero and Journey, and I think also Monument Valley, and those games where I felt like, oh, you don't have to kill everything, and you don't have to like have super hard puzzles, and you can actually focus more on the aesthetic side and a little less on the gameplay. And so that was also a thing that made me feel that, oh, maybe I can make a game, because this is more like what I can do.
I kind of think that you clearly knew the band, right? That your mom was connected with. So was it easy to come up with the story, or was it was it challenging because you knew them so well, or was it easier?
Well, I mean, I'm happy you think it's a real band, because it's not a real band.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But it's good that you think that.
Okay.
I did the right job, I guess. No, I mean, my mom was never playing in let's say, a band, and then she died, and then I made the game based on the idea.
Okay.
No, it wasn't like that. She played in many bands, and my parents, they met and played in a band, and then they became a couple. So actually, it's also, I was born from a band.
Nice. That's
Way, so, yeah.
So how do you come up then with those three different characters? Was it fastly flowing? Like, oh, I want these kind of emotions, negative emotion of depression, anxiety, and anger, or was how did the flow go?
Those things came later as well. The emotions came later. I mean, in the beginning, I guess I wanted some characters like in contrast, because it's always good when you want to tell a story that you don't have the same types. Then it's not so dynamic and interesting. And so I was like, okay. And then I also wanted some personality types, that someone I would be able to relate to a little bit. So it came a little bit organically. I just had some characters that I liked. Like there was I think Woody Allen. He was like the inspiration for the pianist. And then there's this guy from Jackass that was the inspiration for the drummer. And then a weird producer that was the inspiration for the bassist. And so that they started out a little bit like that, but then when I actually went into the voice acting phase, I started actually using the voice actors as the inspiration, if that makes sense. Like the voice, I was kind of building it towards them. So I mean, I designed the characters before the voice actors, but I let the voice actors somehow like just be themselves. And in a way, I think the voice acting tells a lot more about them than how they look and how they animate. And I just took friends, like my personal friends, like my own friends, and that also knew each other, and I put them together, and I think that's what made it feel that it's real. Because
Yeah, it feels really real. It feels really like a podcast kind of way that some people are talking about this. So, yeah.
I also think that's why a lot of people celebrate the sound, because it's because of the voice actors. And you can say the positive thing was that, you put them together and there's chemistry. The harder thing was that emotional scenes with acting, that was very hard to do. From the drummer's side, I have only a couple lines that I have been able to use from a lot of recordings.
Okay, yes.
So sometimes it breaks a bit that, oh, they're not professional actors, so you can put them together and make them have a casual conversation where they laugh and have fun. But if you suddenly want to be like, oh, well, now you have to cry, or now you have to so become something you're not, then it's then they have to suddenly act, and yeah, it's not everyone that just have that gene. So
Okay, I hear that's a lot of struggles. So, if you would redo the process, would you do like? Would that be the thing that you would really do different, or was there
oh
other
no,
elements?
it wasn't that hard. I mean, I'm just saying it more like as a general thought. But
Okay.
I mean, we have most of it. There's a very little in the game where there actually is characters having very heavy conversation. It's very little. So I'm just happy that that little part works. But yeah, I mean, of course, if I would have done a bigger thing with a lot of voice acting, then probably I would have ended up scrapping them and taking someone more professional. I mean, the thing was like, for instance, the pianist, he was very natural act. He didn't believe that he was. And
Yeah, I would believe that he was depressed.
he would always go in the studio, and then I would be afterwards like, and his name is actually Kirk. I named it after this because I like the name Kirk. And so afterwards, he would be like, "Really, you like this? You think this is good?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's great." He didn't understand.
If you look at the whole project itself, where are you really proud of?
I think I'm proud of everything almost. I mean, I'm really proud of a lot of it. I mean, it's easier to say what I'm less proud of.
Okay, also fine.
I mean, I think the art style I made all the art assets for it, and so I think the art style is good. I did not spend too much time as well on the art, so I found a nice balance, which I'm also proud of in many ways. I think what I'm less proud of is gameplay is like works and it gets you through the game. Proud of myself because I wasn't like a big game designer when I started this game, so I'm proud of the fact that I learned to do a design, but definitely think there was lots of places where I could have rethought the level design. I could maybe I reused some mechanics more and used others less. There was like just some game design imbalances maybe, and then from like let's say a producer point of view, someone who has to administrate money and all these things which I also had to do because I was very brute force. I have to make this game. I don't care. I'm gonna do it. I don't care. There are some things that okay, fuck, like I wasted a lot of money on this or whatever. Like maybe we worked on this for too long, and like definitely like experience that I had to gain. But I mean, as the final product, I'm very proud of it because I was expecting it to be a game that people would play because maybe of the aesthetics and like, oh, this sounds interesting, this looks interesting. But I didn't expect people to play it and then actually have some emotional response and actually maybe cry or at least like let it stick with them. And so the fact that some people have said that, I mean, that's just like I'm very proud of that.
I saw your company is like in 6 years, or but how long did you took 6 years to make this, or how?
Yeah, so it took almost 7 years to make it, but it was also a lot of learning, lots of prototypes that came and went, and then I had other jobs as well. So
What is
it's
your other job?
other jobs. I mean, for instance, I would be doing 3D models for different clients. So I would make 3D like 3D movies, and I would teach animation school. I would do different kinds of teaching and also do like animation workshops with kids. And I went to Qatar twice to do a crazy animation film for a theater show. I mean, and I also went to Tunisia to teach. I had some quite interesting jobs, which also was nice to do on the way.
So
But
this
I mean,
was more, the game itself was more a side hustle on the side, if I hear this correctly.
well, I think the first 2 years the game was very much on the side. And then I started gaining, I got funding from sort of cultural grants from the Danish Film Institute. And so then I was sort of full time on the game for about a year, or maybe a little more than a year. And then I had sort of a bit of a waiting time where I didn't get funding, but I was still working a lot on the game. I don't know exactly how much, but I was still working a lot on it. And then from the year 2000 until 2022. At the end of 2022, when I released the game, basically I was working on the game full time. So I still put in a lot of hours into the game. A lot.
I can imagine. In those hours, did you also put some extra hidden eggs in the game?
Very little. Maybe also a thing that the game doesn't have a lot to offer, like in terms of Easter eggs and replayability, and like for me, basically just getting to make the game and finish the game in itself was a tremendous task, and sometimes it felt like an impossible task. So the Easter eggs was like, I had ideas for Easter eggs, but then suddenly I was like, well, don't really have time to design this. So the only thing is, like, there are some hidden lampposts that you might, like, there are some corners that you might not see, and you have to sneak up on them and turn on the lamppost. And
but
so if you
will that specific lamppost give a new animation, or
no, it doesn't do anything. It's just like you got all the lampposts. Congratulations! It's just like
I thought that, but I was like, yeah, I'm not going to light every lamppost.
It's just a plain old achievement. No, but that's the thing. I mean, I guess this is one of the things that gamers can complain about. But I don't really care, because I think the game is not about that, and it's not a game that you buy because you want 10 hours of entertainment. It's like you buy it for this experience, and you can play it again maybe a year or two later and show a friend, and that's just like how it should be. And so it's fine.
So you got funding, right? But then after that you needed to find a publisher. Like, how was that process?
Yeah, so there was finding a publisher was also something that I was trying for many years, or like several years. I was talking to different ones, and some were quite interested, like Humble Publishing, for instance, if you know. Humble Bundle, but they kept rejecting me. But they were like, but they kept being like interested, and which was a nice thing to feel that, but at least there is some kind of interest. There was a nice confidence in a way. But I found a publisher in 2021. This is no, sorry, I'm wrong. 2000.
2000?
Not 2000, sorry, 2020. 2020. Yeah, this is 20 years ago. No, sorry. No. Sorry. 2020, the publisher that ended up publishing the game was someone that I knew, actually. A company in a city not so far of where I made the game. And this guy, I mean, it's a long story, but basically I met him a couple times, and I asked him out of just curiosity, because he's running a studio called Bedtime Digital Games, and they make their own games and publish their own games. So they kind of self-publish. They're like an experienced studio. They have like, I don't know, 10, 12 years of experience, and they're like 15 people. So they're definitely on another level. And so I just wrote him like kind of bold, like, hey, did you ever think about publishing other games than your own game? And he was like, yes.
Nice.
Yeah. And I was like, okay. And then I sent him stuff. He already knew my game. I saw that on Twitter. He liked my GIFs and whatever. So like, he might have interest, who knows. And then when I asked him, he said, I really like this game and I'm really excited about it. And then we kept talking, and then at the end, yeah, we signed the contract. Yeah.
Nice. That's very, very fluent.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, and I mean, I think he gave me a very good deal, and he's a very legit person who's not thinking, oh, I can get this game, and I can, like, ooh, it's like he's very nice guy, and like we had this big release concert where we made a big concert in this tower in a big forest, and with that concert was a lot of effort from me and from him, and it cost a lot of money, which I also ended up paying a lot of the concert, but we both knew that this concert is not gonna make us any money. Like, this concert will not sell the game. So the fact that he would be interested in that was quite unique. You don't have publishers just going out of their way to make a huge release party for you, just because, unless, you're super rich and famous, but, I'm not, so, he's quite special publisher.
Nice. That's really cool to hear. Also, like, how did you met him? Like, did you met him then on Twitter, or did you just met him in like real life? I don't
Yeah,
know.
so the story about how we met was like, first time I met him, I was showing him around the animation school where I studied. So I was giving him a tour, and he was sort of trying to find people to work for him.
Okay.
I was giving him a tour, and at that point, I was just came out of school, and him and his colleagues. I kind of showed my stuff, my portfolio, and then that was kind of it. And then I had made a game on my school iPad game called Lost Tracks, and the game was like very successful. Actually, we didn't sort of charge money for it, but we had like 4 million downloads on iOS. Like, quite actually, suddenly, you know this game, like, Apple was featuring it just by themselves. We weren't doing anything, and so Klaus, the bedtime guy, Klaus, he wrote me like, oh, should we maybe like charge some money for this game? And he said, oh, I know someone in China and I can help you release it, blah blah blah. We had a meeting with sort of me and him and the other people that worked on Lost Tracks, and we never actually ended up releasing it again, because it was that we would have to do an Android port, and then we would have to consider how to distribute the money to all these people that kind of hated the project, and it was just like a big mess, and none of us really wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like he said, I could make some money, but it wasn't like, oh my God, guys, this is gonna make you rich. It was not that feeling we had with it. So, but yeah, that was how I got the connection to him, basically.
And then you knew that he was kind of the pusher of things, even.
Yeah, yes, he really is. Let's get things going. Quite admiring. Works very hard.
If you look at other like starting indie developers, like what would be your advice for them?
Ooh, yeah. Starting indie developers. Well, I have a lot of advice. I don't know where to start. I think first of all, a lot of developers in general, they are developing games because they like games, and then they end up making like a fanboy game. So like you end up making, let's say, a Zelda-like game because you played a lot of Zelda. And I think, if you ask me, that's not a very interesting start to why you would make a game. I think it's great to say, I want to make games and I love playing Zelda, and so I take inspiration from Zelda, but don't be too much just on that. Don't be too much just like, yeah, I just want to make an RPG, whatever it is. Talk to people about your ideas, and talk to people that are not gamers as well. Like, try to talk to your grandmother or your, whatever, your little sister, I don't know, whoever it is, about game ideas, and just try to make something that is not just the same as everything out there just because you want to make a game, because I just think it's a lame premise, and it's not going to add anything to the world. It's just going to create more noise. Yeah, get some kind of originality. I think it's important, and know why you do it, and then if you're starting out, it's also case by case, because I think I started out and I was good at making art and making music, but I had no programming skills and I had no Unity skills. I had few Unity skills, and I was like programming with this stupid thing called Adventure Creator, which was just like this kind of drag and drop thing. And I was initially making an adventure game, but then I started I wanted to do other things, and I think I should just have learned programming. I should just have learned that as I was starting the game, because now I'm doing a little bit more programming, and I also did some programming on the Forest Quartet, but I just put myself in a very hard situation where I was so dependent on other people all the time to move forward with the game. That's a rare case, because it's usually the other way around, where you're a programmer and you make a game, and then you find the artist and you can actually make a rough prototype. So I don't think it's not a thing that happens to a lot of people, but yeah, I mean, the other way around, if you are just a programmer, and you start out and you make a game, then yeah, maybe it's also worth trying to get into the other disciplines of art, like trying to play around with music or play around with visuals or 3D modeling or whatever it is. Like, just it also puts you in a much more powerful position when you end up hiring people and want to hire people or get someone to help you in some way, like that you actually know a bit about the discipline, because you can know, do this person know what they're talking about once they work with you? If you can see that the pace they're going at, or you'll be better at understanding like how to help them, how to communicate with them as well, and understand. Yeah, it's just really good to have multiple skills when you make indie games. You can't really make a game unless it's like some kind of super pixely text-based game. Like, you have to have all the arts in there. You have to have the sound, the music, and the visuals, and indies are known for being small projects with few people, so it's kind of important to have been touching upon the different disciplines.
Yeah. So, and your role stays to be then like the producer, or are you more going to be then more often the programmer?
I mean, right now my role is in the other new project I'm working on. I'm a producer, a sound designer, but I would also say I'm a game designer and a level designer as well. And so I'm kind of like in charge of getting the game together and making all the parts connect. And so right now I'm working with two programmers, and they're amazing programmers. And I would never be able to get to that level, like not even in 2 years. I would have to spend 15 years or whatever. And so I'm just asking them to do stuff, and then I'm like trying to take what they do and put it together. And I guess that's what kind of like a game designer and a level designer does. So I'm doing those things, and then I'm working with an artist who is doing all the illustrations. She's more in charge of the world and the character designs. So it's her idea initially, actually. So the debates with her about where we should take the game, what direction. And so I come from my side with, even though I know how to draw, and even though I can direct movies or whatever, like not movies, but like direct the game. She has her own style that's very unique, and she has a very good workflow, and so she does her thing, and it's great. And I put it together, and then I have been recording sounds for the game, and I'd love to do sound, but if I see myself too busy with everything else, because I have a lot of tasks myself, I'd rather hire someone else for the sound than someone else for the gameplay, because that's so much more risky and so much more crucial. You can't just be like, oh, you're a game designer, come and fix my game, because it's like there's so many things within game design. It's like the script, right, of a movie. Like,
Yeah.
the script, and it's not just a thing you add. It's like everything is coming from that point. So it's easier to add sound at the end. You can't really add game design at the end, right? So then you're failing majestically.
The target audience of like Forest Quartet, I think you didn't really had a target audience, because it was kind of something that you made out of respect for your mother, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was very personal from the beginning. I just didn't know how personal it was. And so, yeah, I just felt like, oh, I'm making it for myself. I'm the target. I think that can work as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with.
No. That's
Yeah.
especially with such
Yeah.
like a personal touch, right? But like now with the new game, like, do you have kind of a target audience now in mind, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're a lot more sharp in towards sort of where we see the game and where it's gonna fit, and and I think it's our target audience is probably the same people that play like Amanita games, Machinarium, Samaros, like those kind of beautiful aesthetically like 2D games. But like the difference between our game and those games are that we're a little more sort of, it's more like doing like a survival game and with stealth elements and some puzzle elements, but it's not like a hardcore puzzle game like an old school, like their game are very old school puzzle games, point and click puzzle games, and so we're doing like a controller based thing, platforming elements and stuff. So
Okay, and so we will hear that in in the fall. That's
yeah,
what I
let's see.
hear.
Yeah, I'll hopefully announce something
Okay.
when we have something that we feel proud of.
Yes. So I'm sure that everyone is looking forward to that.
I hope.
Yeah, I think we're kind of getting close to the end, but do you have something like that you are like, oh, I really want to share this with the whole audience?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I don't exactly know who your audience is. It seems like you are very game development focused. Right?
Yes.
So we're talking more to game developers than to gamers. Game development audience or an up and coming indie person that is struggling or not knowing if it's worth it.
That's a hard question, right? When do you know is it worth
Yeah,
it?
do I do this or not? I mean, I think I would say a little bit about the industry, like because now that I released, like this is the first game that I'm releasing commercially, and it's cool to have your first game like win an IGF and be like supported by PlayStation and all these things. Like that's quite amazing. But I also think like what I'm learning now that everyone told me that I didn't really understand was that so many games coming out all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of them are really good. And I just thought like, oh well, but my game is interesting. Like my game is I'm gonna,
Change the world.
yeah, exactly. Like, and it's very, very like, I think a lot of publishers they have maybe 50 games and then they have two hits, right? And the hits are the ones that make all the money basically, and all the other games they maybe make just as much as it was to make them and a little more, or some does less. But it's like all the other games are just kind of like okay, and then there are the hits, right? Of course, we all aiming to make a hit, the big goal, and all the publishers and all the investors are all hoping for the hit and someone the big hits, right? I'm talking about indie hits, like they're not like hits where you suddenly go buy a big building and have 1,000 people.
Yes.
There was more like hits where you can make for 15 years now. Great. Yeah, I think that's very important to understand that when you release your game, if it's a hit, great, but there's a very small chance that it will be a hit. And just have that in mind that what you will make will at best make back what it costs. If you're not okay with that idea, if you're not okay with the fact that your game, even though you work so hard and you actually have a really interesting thing and people actually really like it, and you check all the boxes, you still might just be doing okay, sales wise. And what's beautiful, like for me, what's beautiful is that, okay, we haven't sold it on Steam, PlayStation, I'm not sure about, it's like, okay, but then suddenly I hear like maybe Epic Store wants to put out the game, and suddenly there's money coming in from this side and money coming in from that side, and a couple of years later, blah blah blah, like it's still making money and it's still sort of helping support me and my creative endeavors, and that's really beautiful. But I think it's definitely hard to have the mindset that if you're starting up and you're thinking that you will only do indie games and stay in the indie industry or whatever it is because you're gonna make the next Stanley Parable or whatever it is, like then yeah, please like rethink it a bit, because even though you are a genius, which you are, like even though you're a genius and you make a great game, like it might not be a hit, and it's just kind of like how it is. So yeah, be cautious with your expectations. I think that would be my final statement. Expectations, man.
Yeah, I think it's very wise. It's saying exactly like it's a form of art, right? So well, some artworks are getting more exposure than others. So indeed.
Yeah, but also what's so insane is, and it's the same with music, is like the winner takes it all. It's like you have the one like there's so much other stuff that's just as good, you know. And then this one thing just sucks it all in, and it can be quite hard to like be like, really, you know. And of course sometimes hits are just so good and they just are they're one of a kind, and what you know, of course it had to be a hit. But it's just yeah, it's quite interesting. Like when you go on Spotify and you see an artist, like a famous artist, and you see all their hit song has like 200 million plays.
Yes.
And all the other songs have 1 billion.
Oh yeah, that's true.
What the fuck? And then they make 8 albums after their hit, and nothing has made money like the fucking one hit, you know.
Yeah.
It's it's a tricky thing, man.
Yeah, that's interesting how that goes. I think that goes with anything that like art-wise, right? It suddenly can blow or not. So I hope that this video blows. So give a like. It's the moment.
It's a hit. Your YouTube hit. Yeah, you need one. Man, we all need our hits.
Exactly right. So yeah, that's an interesting view as well. But I think it's a fair view. I mean, there are like in 2021 there were 11k new games on Steam itself. So yeah, it's a hit or a miss, right? So
yeah, it's really hard. Yeah.
But I hope your next game will be a hit, and we will see it in fall.
I hope so too.
And yeah, I was really it was really happy to have you here in this interview.
Yeah,
and thank you for all your wisdom.
Of course, thanks for having me. It was fun. I had a good time.
That's nice to hear. Okay, everyone, if you have more questions, please leave them in the comments, and then up to the next one for the next month. Well, that was an emotional ride and so much advice. I hope you also enjoyed it. I did. Next time we are going to dive into a more board game kind of game. So please, if you like this, like, subscribe and ring the bell to not miss the next one. See you in the next video. Bye bye.